everyone, welcome to this lesson about tackling the forgetting curve. So essentially what we're going to be talking about is when you're studying, learning a language such as Japanese, there can be challenges along the way, most notably the obvious challenge of trying to learn something and then realizing you're forgetting it and you're trying to learn different words or sentences, and how do you retain that knowledge and retain that in your brain. So we're going to be suggesting some techniques. We're going to just be explaining about how that happens, and we're going to be just sharing our experiences as well, about how we've approached studying Japanese. So what is learning?
Okay, so learning simply means to gain knowledge, but specifically it means to gain knowledge towards an end. And to learn means to parse information and categorize them, analyze and come to conclusions. But the learning by itself isn't really one size fits all scenario because everyone learns differently. And for many reasons in our complex societies, we are forced to learn many things and we need to constantly make an effort towards learning it. But the problem is that learning doesn't always stick. Why?
So, so this is due to, well, simply forgetting. Um, so it's important to study effectively, because our brains are quite simply, they're kind of designed to forget. So we go through so many experiences during life, and so there are certain experiences that we tend to remember more than others. Our brain prioritizes things more than others. Um, and so when it comes to learning, in the sense of learning Japanese, for example, if you do not put a certain amount of effort into learning, or if you do it in a way that is ineffective, if you learn ineffectively, then you will kind of end up wasting time and it won't be efficient and you'll end up forgetting what you've just learned. So, reviewing effectively is absolutely key to save time and effort while trying to learn something, because if there's no attempt to retain certain information, it's lost unless it's important to you. So, if we take a look at just this graph, um, we can see how quickly do we forget something each day. And if we're just talking about general experiences that we go through, just mundane, something that just happens every day, that we have, we tend to forget things very quickly, and we have a short-term memory, long-term memory, and certain memories go into long-term memory, but generally everyday life things doesn't stay in our memory for a long time. So after a while you can see the percentage decreases even on the first day, and you get to day 6 and you have 25% of what you remember gone. um, so in this case, you could be trying to remember certain vocabulary words, and you might find it hard to remember if you're doing it ineffectively, and you might lose some of that knowledge or whatever you've learned. So, how do we combat that? How do we also motivate ourselves to kind of get over that problem?
Okay, so first off, when you try to study something, motivation is really key because you can't really uh, review something and study effectively without trying to have motivation towards that goal. So you need to understand your motivations. One of the most difficult parts of studying is to acquire energy to go and do it. The activation energy, as it's called, is the amount of energy that you need to start doing a given activity. And this activation energy can be hard to get, even more when you don't feel motivated to learning it. That's why when you learn a language, you need to really love that language. If you're learning Japanese, you need to love Japanese anime, music, shows. You need to like talking to someone in Japanese. And that's the reason that motivation is so important in keeping you wanting to learn that language. And it's generally okay to make your brain relax, just not too much. You need to keep a balance in that because if you think about it, you don't need to learn 24 hours every day to be fluent in a language or everything else generally, but you can't also stay days without learning something because as we were talking about, if you just leave it to your brain to figure out how to store information, you're gonna lose information very fast. If you learn 4 words in 6 days, you're gonna remember one on average. So you need to keep consistent while learning a new language or learning anything else. Uh, that's why studying 10 minutes every day is really better than nothing. Because if you think about it, 10 minutes every day means that we will learn more than an hour every week. And an hour every week is a lot more than nothing every week.
So that
So,
you go on.
yeah.
Okay. So if we take an analogy, for example, um, we've got the tail of the hare and the tortoise, and in this story, I'm sure maybe you've heard of it, maybe you haven't. The hare is really fast. Obviously, the tortoise is really slow, and the hare goes. They race against each other. The hare goes really fast, and they decide to, because they're so fast, they think that they'll just take a nap. And the tortoise, who's going slow at a steady speed, manages to get to the finish line faster than before the hare does, because the hare takes liberties, thinks it's fast, and kind of slows down. Now, in a sense, you can apply that to learning in the sense of going slow and doing a short amount of time is far better than doing 5-6 hours on a whole day, and then you just feel like that was so much, and you feel like you have to keep up that every day, which would be ineffective, because when you're learning, there can be a certain point where you feel tired in your learning, and you've got to take it easy. You can't expect to do loads of hours and be able to do it. So to just split things into small chunks and go slowly in the progress of learning the language is much more efficient than trying to do loads in one single chunk.
Yeah, so as Yasuke talked about the hair analogy, it really ran much faster than the turtle, but because it got burned off from just doing everything in a short burst of motivation, it also did not work out for her. So while motivation is really important to get through your goals, diligence and dedication is worth much more than motivation alone, because it can come in bursts. And even if you really like something like Japanese, the first time that you go through a wall, like you encounter a really difficult kanji or a word that you just can't understand, a grammar point that you can't understand, you are going to have your motivation drop. And if you didn't build a schedule, a diligence in learning the language or whatever you're learning, you won't be able to continue with motivation alone. So one other thing that's important is to get through studying with less mental burden. If you're required to sit for multiple hours of studying every single day, it will be surely difficult to maintain your concentration. Even more if it's a subject that you don't like, because in a lot of situations we need to learn things that we don't like to learn. So just staying on your cell phone and browsing social media releases much more dopamine than studying, and you naturally don't feel like getting up and studying. So we need to have some methods to get that activation energy ready for you to go and begin learning something. The first step in order for you to continue for a longer time and progress through the days in learning a language.
So, where do we start when it comes to that? So, one method of motivation can be the 1 minute rule. So, essentially, when you're learning a language, you're fitting that time in with the rest of your timetable, other things that you're doing in the day, and that might include going on your phone. So, it's about trying to gradually find the space in your time to fit that in without it being too overwhelming for you. So first of all, we have to fight the laziness that we can kind of feel inherent when we're starting to do something new. So, because after you take that first step, everything is much easier. So, what we could do, for example, is, okay, right, we've got one day, okay, I'm going to focus on doing 1 minute, and it's just 1 minute. I'm just going to get up, for example, and write something. I'm going to write a phrase in Japanese. I'm going to spend 1 minute and like look over some vocabulary, and then just try and remember like 1 or 2 words. And gradually you can increase that time until it's something you're more manageable with. But what you're doing is you're gradually becoming used to what you are getting used to, that sort of schedule of dedicating a small bit of time to learning a language, and that can help you. So when you feel on days where you're not as motivated, because as just Nordity just said, you're not going to always feel motivated all the time. At least on days where you don't feel as motivated, you can be like, okay, I'm going to try and do just 1 minute, or I'm going to just try and do 5 minutes, even though I don't feel motivated. And then at least you can tick that off and say that's good. And that's what I highly recommend as well. When you've learned something and you just don't say you've spent 1 minute or 5 minutes, do give the time to reward yourself in your mind, to say, well done, I'm making progress. And that is very important to say, you know what, I'm doing well. It's very important to say that and remind yourself of that, because it will help you to keep going for the next time. So that's a starting thing that you can do. So now what we're going to do is we're going to just show a video about a technique that we can do to motivate ourselves. So here's the Pomodoro technique, and it's just going to be a video, so let's watch it.
The Pomodoro technique is one of my favorite techniques to fight procrastination and make...
Actually, I'll stop. Before carrying the video, can everyone hear and see the video in full screen? Just message in the study room, just so
Yeah.
Okay, excellent, thanks.
I just think that Mikey has his microphone unmuted, so we can hear echo from him.
Okay, Mikey, if you could just mute your microphone so we just don't hear the background. Awesome, thank you.
Yeah, he muted it now. Thanks.
Awesome. Okay, let's go.
Pomodoro technique is one of my favorite techniques to fight procrastination and maintain focus and productivity throughout the day. Stay tuned for tips on how to incorporate this into your study routine. What's going on, guys? This is Jay from medschoolinsiders.com. First, I want to talk to you a little bit about the history of the Pomodoro technique. So it was invented back in the early 1990s by Francesco Cirillo. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right. He named it the Pomodoro technique after the tomato-shaped timer that he used to actually track his work as a university student. Since then, this technique has gained much popularity in various productivity and self-improvement circles. So the theory behind it is that any large task or any series of tasks can be broken down into short timed intervals called pomodoros. Each is separated by a short break. This takes advantage of the fact that our brains have limited attention spans. So as to how to use it, the only item you really need is a timer. You can go old-fashioned or use your phone or computer with an app. My favorite app is called 3030 on the iPhone. It's my favorite because of its clean interface and customizability, thus making it easy to do the traditional Pomodoro or customize it to your liking. More on that in a little bit. So first, choose a task or series of tasks that you need to accomplish. Next, set the timer to 25 minutes. Continue to work on the task until the timer goes off. Avoid constantly checking the timer. Once the timer goes off, take a short break for 5 minutes. Get up during this time. Do not take the break at the same spot that you were working. I personally like getting up, holding a third world squat, stretching, moving around. Now is also the time to use the bathroom and grab a refill for your water. After 4 Pomodoro cycles, take a longer break of 20 minutes. Rinse and repeat. Distractions. During your Pomodoro cycles, do your best to limit distractions. The whole point is 25 minutes of intense focus. Don't be checking Facebook or Reddit or the Med School Insider's website on and off. Focus on the task at hand. So I personally put my phone on either airplane mode or do not disturb mode, but be careful because do not disturb mode can actually affect the notifications on your timer app if you are using your smartphone app. If someone else comes knocking for help, use the inform, negotiate, callback strategy, which was suggested by Francesco Cirillo himself. So inform the distracting party that you're in the middle of something, negotiate a time when you can get back to them, and call back when your Pomodoro is complete and you're ready to address their need. When to use it. I only found out about the technique in medical school, and if you've checked my first video ever, link above right here, then you'll know that it is one of the key strategies that I wish I started using as an undergrad in college. So I often use this when I can't get myself motivated to study for a subject that is either particularly dull or boring. So anyways, I get my Pomodoro app started and I tell myself I just need to do one cycle of 25 minutes. By making this commitment small to just do a small amount of work, it's easier to get started. And once I finish that cycle, it always feels less daunting as I've built momentum. At this time, it's usually not a problem to keep moving forward with my work. I've also found it useful for reading textbook chapters, going through my Anki deck, and getting started on background reading for research projects. Remember though that Pomodoro is ultimately a productivity system to serve you. Therefore, don't feel obligated to always take a break if you're in the groove. For longer days where you'll be studying for most of the day, such as the day before a final exam, I recommend you do take breaks as this sustains your stamina and prevents burnout. Sometimes though, it's best to just keep chugging along once you've built momentum. I often stop the Pomodoro app and continue my work without breaks when I'm either reviewing lectures or doing research, data analysis, and writing. So with reviewing lectures, I generally review one lecture, take a brief break after finishing the lecture, and then move on to the next. These breaks feel more natural to me than taking timed breaks, but as always, figure out what works best for you. So going on to research. While Pomodoro has been conducive to background research reading for myself, I find that the writing and the analysis part of research requires prolonged periods of concentration, and therefore I prefer to not take the break after 25 minutes. At this time, I either modify my Pomodoro or I just go for long stretches without taking a break. So then going on to modifications, again, because Pomodoro is a template to help you increase your productivity, you may want to actually alter the timing scheme. So for some tasks, it may be best to alter the timing intervals from a 25 5-minute allocation, which is the default, to something like a 50-10. I've used the 50-10 minute intervals with good results. Figure out what works best for you. You can change it up however you please. Again, the 30-30 app allows for flexibility in this regard and has a great interface. Alright guys, that is it for this video. If you found any of these tips helpful, please press the like button below. New videos every week. Hit the subscribe button if you have not already, and I will see you guys in that next one.
Can everyone...
The Pomodoro technique.
Can everyone see the slide?
Yep. But it's just a little bit it's smaller now. Maybe you can close it and open again?
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, okay, it's fixed now. Okay, so now that we've talked about how to get motivated and build a schedule for you to review things, it's important to say that review isn't about quantity but quality first. It's about how you review something. The acts of revision, according to the Ebbinghaus that made the research about the forgetting curve that we talked about before, he says that they should be spaced in gradually increasing intervals. So, if you learn something now, you can review it again in 1 day, then in 3 days, then in a week, a month, and you can keep up building that. Because once you get your neural paths built for learning something, if you know the science behind it, you can keep building up that interval in a increasingly fashion. So that being said, the most optimal time to review something would be right before we forget it. But that isn't feasible, is it? Because we have other commitments and we can't just remember that we are about to learn to forget something. So although that would be the most optimal strategy, we can't do that. We can't just know when we're about to forget something. So we need to do something that is at least a little bit close to that, and we have some methods for that.
Okay, so the most obvious method that everyone, I presume, knows is just basic flashcards, which is the almost bread and butter, the basics for reviewing. So obviously you have flashcards, you make the flashcards, you put some information on the flashcards, you obviously you have the thing that you want to learn on one side, you flip it over and you have the answer on the other side, and you sort them into groups according to how well you know the flashcards. And so if I look at a flashcard and I recognize it, okay, I'm going to review that flashcard tomorrow. If I look at it again tomorrow and recognize it again, I'm going to be like, okay, I'm going to review that in 3 days' time. And you gradually increase the interval of how long you learn. So essentially that flashcard is going into the next group. You send the card to the next group, and that next group is basically a longer period of time. And then if you recognize it, you send it to a next group, which again is a longer period of time of learning. So essentially, you're getting your brain used to remembering it. So that's essentially what flashcards are and how they're used. And obviously, we have a diagram here just showing exactly what I mean. You have the flashcard box every day. You get it right, you move it into every other day. And when you get it wrong, you move the flashcards to deck 1. When I say that, this diagram is just an example. Again, don't take it literally. It's obviously up to you how you want to customize your experience of learning. And as we explain later, there are also apps that help you in that process. But this is just an example of what you can do.
Yes, so this type of method that's called the Leitner system was invented a lot of time ago, before computers even existed. So the thing about this type of method is that although it works, it does work, you don't really have a good individuality for the cards. Because imagine that you just got a card right on the everyday box. You would expect to review that card after 2 days. But say that you will review the every other day card the next day. If you just reviewed your card, you are gonna review it also in the next day. So imagine if you're on a unlucky streak and you will review your once per week cards on the next day after that. Then you are going to review that same card that you were supposed to review after 7 days, just 2 days after you've learned it. So this method, although it works, it doesn't have great individuality for the cards. It works as a whole, you are going to learn stuff, but individual cards, individual information fragments aren't going to be as precise as they should be. So that gave space when computers came out to create something better, and that's what we're going to talk about.
Okay, so one of the most well-known methods to review is obviously Anki, and Anki is an app that you can get on your Android, Windows, any operating system essentially. It is paid on iPhone, and what it does this whole scheduling process of flashcards, putting them into categories. It does it for yourself, and it has individuality, so it spaces each individual flashcard according to how well you know that particular set of information on the flashcard. The good thing about this is you can download previous decks from other people. So if it's Japanese, there are many different Japanese decks, and you could download one and you can learn what someone else has already created. So you don't have to create a deck yourself, but you can do so if you want to make it more personal. You can make a deck for yourself. So that can include text. It has option for text information. You have the option for images. So you can add images to your flashcard. You can add sounds to your flashcard. You can even add videos to your flashcard as well, just to enhance the experience of learning, so it's not just text information. So it's quite flexible, and there's quite a few features that you can get on it. And we will do once we've completed this lesson, we'll review over how Anki works, for those of you who want to stay and kind of understand Anki. There's another app that I would recommend, which is Quizlet, and again, this is another flashcard app, and that is free. You can pay, but you don't have to, but it's free. You can get flashcard decks of Japanese or anything that you're learning for that matter, and you can make your own apps as well, and it has sort of different mini games with the flashcards to make the experience even more exciting. So those are two flashcard apps that I can recommend.
Okay, so moving a little bit to talk about experiences. Me and Yasker are going to share some experiences that we had using spaced repetition, and we can open it if someone wants to talk about their experiences using Anki or learning something that they found they had trouble finding motivations. You can write them in the chat so we can comment on them later. So, starting with myself, last year I started my Japanese learning journey, and I just started learning kanji because I wanted to move past that first, because everyone told me that it was difficult, and I thought that if I moved through the most difficult part first, the rest would be much easier. And I was right. But so what I did was I downloaded a deck based on Remember the Kanji, and we've already done a presentation about it here on this group if you check on the Lessons RSS channel. And what I've done was I was learning 60 kanjis every day. And that may not seem very much if you never studied it or if you never used Anki, but it escalates really fast because when you are trying to learn something in Anki, you need to review the cards. And every time you learn more cards, your review amount of cards is gonna grow. And you need to share your time between learning new things and reviewing the ones you already know. So that consumed a lot of time. It was about 5 hours of daily study just to learn kanji on that month. But the nice thing is that I've learned 2,200 kanji in just 1 month and some few days. But to go through that, I used Anki to schedule my cards and make the whole process easier. I've used a deck that I've downloaded online, and I can share it later, or you can check it on the Lessons RSS channel. And I've used the 1 minute rule, and it's alright if you get up, do 1 minute of reviews or do 2 reviews and you don't feel like continuing, that's alright, you can come back later. And I've used the Pomodoro technique. That helped me a lot because during those Pomodoro intervals, I could check my phone, I could browse Reddit, I could do anything to help my mind get away from studying so that I can recover my energy for that. And that's really important when we're going through a session of long study, like 5 hours every day. And that helped me a lot immensely through that process.
as for me, I think I hadn't used Anki. I sort of used I used another app called Wanikani, which again is a flashcard app, and it gave me the flashcards. It gave me what kanji to learn, and it helped. It did this space learning for me. Oh wait, can you hear me? Sorry, can everyone hear me? Can you hear
I
me?
can hear, I can hear you, but I don't know about everyone else.
Oh, sorry. Okay. No, I'll start again. I'll put my microphone near to my mouth. So I started with an app called Wanikani, which was an app that's that helps you learn kanji, gives you the flashcards for you, and again, it helped because it did this space to learning for me. So I, as I was learning new vocabulary, it would obviously space them out for me, and it helped me to start by learning radicals, which is like components of kanji, then learn the kanji, then learn words with kanji, and it would put them, once I'd learnt the words, it put them into the flashcard thing for review, and then I'd constantly review that. But so that really helped. Again, because I enjoyed it, I spent a long time doing the reviews. But there were some times where, because I was doing other things in life, I was just really busy. So I just would spend, say 5 minutes or something, just quickly reviewing, like on the bus on the way to school. So that really helped as well. So again, it's a matter of, sometimes it's just, you might not think, you might say, I haven't got free time to do this or do that, but sometimes there's times where, like for example, now I'm looking so much at the time that I spend, like sometimes just on YouTube or browsing on Instagram, when I could just do some practice. I'm not saying that leisure time, get rid of leisure time, but there are some times where, I sometimes just sit down and think, I've got no free time. But there's free time sometimes if you look at it, and you can be like, I could actually just squeeze 5 minutes on the bus on the way somewhere. So it's again looking for those opportunities to kind of study and enjoying the process. And if you enjoy it, then it's going to be a very, very good experience for you. I think. Has my connection gone? I don't believe this.
Hey, what happened?
Hello? Wait, sorry. Can everyone...
Welcome back.
Sorry. Oh my, I think that was my connection. Apologies about that. I've recorded whatever I said before anyway. I was basically just saying, what was I saying? Basically, if there's opportunities, you find opportunities during the day, you might think that you've got no free time, but actually when you think about it, sometimes there's more free time than you think, and it's just about using that, or sometimes it's just giving it a go. But again, when you're learning, I found that sometimes I put too much pressure on myself, and when you're learning, don't put pressure on yourself too much. Yes, there are times, maybe if you're working towards a test, you want to put a bit more pressure to work towards something, but sometimes just remember to enjoy it as well. Enjoy it first, and then it'll be a lot easier. So, yeah.
Can you share your screen again? So just complimenting a little bit about what Yasuki talked about, the best time for you to have started learning something, whatever that is, would be 5 years ago. Because by now, you would already know much things about that. If you started learning Japanese 5 years ago, you would be very advanced right now. But, well, we can't go back into the past, so the second best time for you to begin something is right now. And even if you say that you don't have free time, I'm pretty sure that you can squeeze off 10 minutes every day to begin. And even if it's 10 minutes, it's much better than nothing. Every month that you do something for 10 minutes every day, you are doing exponentially more than you would have done if you just stood that month saying, I can't do it this month, I will start next month. So While you can't go back to the past and begin it some years back, you can start it right now and you can move towards your goals.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's so it goes to the saying, you're never too old to learn. And you know even not even if you're never too old to learn, there, like as we've explained, there are effective ways to learn. And some people might spend a long time, 10 years learning, but if they didn't learn in an effective way, um, then the learning might not be as useful. So if you just try out some of the techniques that we've discussed in this video and just give it a go, take it easy at first with your learning and just enjoy the process. Reward yourself as you're learning, and set small challenges and work towards them. And just doing small things can help you learn. And the best time is now. So wait.
So just answering the Arstevan's question, is 2 or 3 hours per day too much for a beginner? It absolutely isn't. It just really depends on what you wanna do. If you're having fun and that those 2 or 3 hours are considered as a hobby to you, that's perfect. You can do it and it won't hurt to do that. The thing is, you need to find a sweet spot between something that isn't burning you out. Because if you do 2 or 3 hours ago for the first month, then you're just too tired to continue and you just drop it off, that wasn't really worth it. So you really need to find out what works for yourself. So
Absolutely. So absolutely, everybody has a different way of learning. So just try different methods, but just try little bits at a time. Don't burn yourself out, and just go on this journey of learning. Um, you know, I spent quite a long time learning languages one way, which is maybe more textbook and certain things, and I realize I have to change the way I'm learning. So it's never too late to try and change how you learn if you're getting too tired of learning in a certain way. But it's important to make sure you're enjoying it and you're kind of testing to see if you're having results from what you're learning as well. So yeah, and it can take you 5 years, it could take you 1 year, it could take you 6 months to get to where you want to be. Everyone learns at a different pace. So when you're learning, important thing is don't compare yourself to other people, but do see how other people are learning and maybe get ideas, but don't compare yourself in a negative way, because everyone's learning differently and everyone has different brains and different ways of learning. And so just take ideas and try and see if they work for you.
yeah, and about that, I've talked about that in a previous lesson also. But even if you are using the worst possible method in the world, like you actively try to search for the most horrible method to learn something, you are learning something. Even if it's horrible, your time isn't well spent. You are learning something. So you, one thing that most people do when learning a language is trying to search for the best method. What is the best textbook? What is the best YouTube channel? What is the best teacher available? Just start. Just find out what works for you. Eventually, even if you're in a bad method, you're going to notice it's a bad method. So you can move out. You just need to begin somewhere, start learning it, and discover your own pace.
Absolutely. So has anyone got any questions at all, or anyone want to share their sort of experience? And okay, you learnt by binge reading. See, I think that is very good. If there's one thing I'd say in terms of learning languages that is good for learning is to just find material that's real life material and practice. Like if you're going to read, you take a book, a novel, or I don't know, something about history, something that interests you, and read it in that language. And it's not so much necessarily about then trying to learn this word and that word and this word and that word, but trying to learn the thing as a whole. So again, you'll come back, and then through that experience of reading, you might pick up certain phrases, certain structural patterns as a whole. And you're not going to remember everything, but it's something that can get your brain working and experiencing that language, which is very important, especially with languages. It's not just about sitting down and doing some flashcards, which is also good, but it's also about experiencing that language as well. Like how we have experiences and we forget some experiences and we remember some experiences, as we talked about before with the forgetting curve. If you have experiences that are important to you, maybe you're reading I don't know, fan fiction, I don't know. Hey, if you read something fan fiction in a certain language or a manga and you really enjoy it and you're experiencing it in that language, then an experience can help you remember things sometimes more strongly than reviewing all the time. So again, I think as well as reviewing using the techniques, I think it's good to just give it a go and get right into material, real life material, newspapers, even listening to podcasts, watching some YouTube videos, listening to some Japanese songs, and just enjoy it. But yeah, that's good. Changing everything used to English. You joined English communities, reading manga and novels. Those are really good things to do. Has anyone got any other questions as well? And just drop it down. You can either open your mic and just speak, or you can just message in general. Well, we've come to general now. What's this? What's the worst resource to learn Japanese?
I was joking about it, but apparently someone compiled a list of the worst methods to go about learning Japanese.
Oh yikes! We won't look at that now. If you guys want to have a look at it, if you guys that want to have a look at it, probably have a look at it. And
Yeah, just for the recording, if someone wants to check it, it's on Reddit, r/learn Japanese. It's what's the worst resource to learn Japanese you've ever found?
okay.
No, you've ever run into. Okay. That's funny.
To be honest, there's what I'd say. I mean, now we're talking about that, and me and Norty was talking about this before. Certain courses they run, and the objective, as well as so-called teaching you how to learn Japanese, is to make money off you as well. So in the case, they might have a structure, and you might find this with certain language classes where you're learning at the set pace they set you, and you have to learn in a certain way, and you have to pay this amount of money for the course. Sometimes it's not worth the amount of money. So I don't know what my brother's doing. He's playing League of Legends. Yeah, there's certain courses that you have that will teach you in a certain way, and it might not necessarily help you learn. So again, if you're in a say a Japanese language course and it's not working for you, then don't stay in the course if it's not working for you. You should first of all ask if you can have some adjustments to suit you, and if the adjustments aren't made and they're not working for you, and you're not going to enjoy the class, so it's best to just try and find something else. So in regard to this Reddit link, if there's a resource that is just really bad, which there are, because there just are some methods, then just don't stick in that method, thinking that by sticking through that method, I'm going to get through. If you're not enjoying it, like in this sense, yeah, obviously you're not going to be motivated all the time. There's going to be times that you need to push through. But if there's a course that is just not working for you day in, day out, don't be afraid to take a break, or don't be afraid to give it up and try something new that works for you.